Much, Alex. Sorry, the notification there. Yeah, thanks very much, Alex, for that. Welcome and all the housekeeping, etc. So, just firstly, I'll introduce myself. So, I'm Chris Rawlings. I'm the Safeguarding Compliance Officer for the RFU. So, mainly dealing with the sort of the Disclosure and Barring Service, or the DBS. So, hopefully, from today, you'll get a lot of useful information. But just to reiterate what Alex said, we'll be looking at taking away any chats or things like that, and then creating a proper DBS FAQ bundle and sharing these slides afterwards. So here, just quickly, here's an agenda I'm looking to cover on this webinar. Hopefully you'll all find it beneficial, as I know there'll be people from different levels of experience and knowledge on here tonight. As I've just at the bottom, I've added a Q&A part. This will be dependent on the time, but I want to ensure, as we said, that you will get what you need from this webinar. So please do enter any questions into that chat function as we go. And don't worry, we won't be asking anyone to come off and speak verbally in front of everyone. And again, also want to ensure that any query, no matter how big or small, is responded to. Depending on time at the end, we'll cover some questions. But yeah, just as Alex said, we will be recording this, sharing the video, sharing the slide deck, and a copy of all of the FAQ questions after this. So don't worry about taking down all of the notes as much as you can. Just try and listen and get as much as you can out of this. So if we start with what is the DBS, sort of what is its purpose, and how does this really relate to rugby? So just a bit of background, what is the DBS? So in 2012, the UK saw the establishment of the Disclosure and Barring Service, which was a significant development in the realm of safeguarding and security. So this organisation was created to streamline and enhance the process of background checks for individuals in various roles, especially those working with vulnerable people. The DBS took over the responsibilities of the old Criminal Records Bureau, so commonly known as the CRB. I'm not sure if anyone here on the call tonight's been involved in safeguarding going back to that sort of time. But the CRB was responsible for providing criminal record checks. But with the formation of the DBS, there was a shift towards a more comprehensive and efficient system. One of the key improvements brought about by the DBS was the amalgamation of the Criminal Records Bureau and the old Independent Safeguarding Authority, or ISA as it was known. So this merger created a single unified organisation which streamlined the process and combined the expertise of both entities. So yeah, in summary, the Disclosure and Barring Service, it's been established in 2012, has played a crucial role in enhancing the safety and security of vulnerable people. By replacing the CRB and integrating the ISA, the DBS has become a more efficient and comprehensive organisation, which ultimately contributes to the overall safeguarding efforts in the UK. So, what is its purpose? As the name suggests, the DBS primarily serves two main functions. So, first one, disclosures. It's all about revealing relevant information. So the DBS discloses information related to an individual's criminal record or criminal history. This information is sourced from the Police National Computer, so or PNC, which is a comprehensive database, as well as the relevant barred lists for children and or adults. Additionally, local intelligence from the individual's local police force, or LPF, if it's known as, that's also considered depending on the level of check, which we'll come on to a bit later. And now let's move on to that second part, barring. The DBS manages individuals who've committed offences or actions that render them unsuitable to engage with specific workforces, such as those involving children, adults, or both. This function is pivotal in ensuring the safety and well-being of individuals by preventing, well-being of vulnerable individuals, by preventing individuals with unsuitable backgrounds from taking up roles where they could pose a risk. So through these two main functions, the DBS does really play a crucial role in safeguarding and maintaining the integrity of those sectors working with vulnerable people. So how does this relate to rugby? Well, in the context of rugby, the DBS is a fundamental part of the safer recruitment process, sort of akin to building a protective wall. It serves as a robust mechanism to prevent individuals with a history of unsuitable behaviour from taking on roles within the rugby community, and again, especially those working and coaching children. In more in-depth details related to safe recruitment can be found in the In Touch course. As such, I'd advise anyone who's not completed that on the call tonight to sign up, which you can do so via our GMS course finder, and just looking for the In Touch course. So by engaging with the DBS process, both the RFU and the individual clubs and organisations can gain a clear understanding of potential risks associated with individuals seeking roles within our sport. This proactive approach ensures that those entrusted with coaching and mentoring responsibilities are suitable to do so. The DBS not only instills confidence within the rugby community, but also provides assurance to parents and other volunteers, knowing that those coaching children have undergone rigorous background checks, ultimately then creating a sense of trust and security, fostering a positive and supportive environment for everyone involved. One crucial aspect is that the DBS ensures that nobody appearing on the barred list can engage in the children's workforce. This is not just a matter of safety, but also a legal requirement, as attempting to do so is considered a criminal offence. So if we just quickly cover eligibility, one second. What is eligibility, regulated activity? Who can be DBS checked? And why can't we DBS check everyone? So to see here, the slides taken from the Disclosure and Barring Service guidance. So regulated activity is a term defined in the Safeguarding Vulnerable Groups Act 2006, which was later amended by the Protection of Freedoms Act 2012. In simple terms, it refers to work that a barred person, someone deemed unsuitable due to their background, must not engage in. This regulation is a key part of effective safe recruitment processes, acting as that barrier to prevent unsuitable individuals from participating in roles that involve working with vulnerable groups. It's important to note that according to the regulations, a child is defined as anyone who has not yet reached their 18th birthday. However, an activity is solely, if an activity is solely related to their employment, such as induction training when starting work, the individual is considered a child only if under the age of 16. This distinction is crucial in determining the application of regulated activity and as such, the eligibility to apply for a DBS check. Okay, so here's a flowchart covering an overview of questions to consider when determining eligibility. Again, I'm aware this and the following slides may be a bit wordy, but as a reminder, these will be available after the webinar, so you can review and digest the content, as well as access any links that I've contained within this presentation. We'll cover the various levels of DBS later on, but ultimately, following this flowchart thought process will assist you in managing your volunteer workforce, with who can and can't be DBS checked and whether they are eligible for a barred list check, etc. I think it's a good resource to refer back to when considering when someone needs a DBS check. I'd also like to add, this is really focused on the activity someone carries out. So like not relevant just to a role name. We need to consider that, for example, a team manager position may only have administrative involvement and sit at home away from a club when children are present. So this activity is not going to be eligible for a DBS clearance. Whereas someone with the same role name, so a team manager, may be carrying out admin duties, but in addition, regularly at training and supervising children. So it's this part that would put them in an eligible position. So we just need to ensure we're again focusing on the activity someone is carrying out and not just the role name. Again, here we have a snippet covering activities and frequency related to working with children. For the context of rugby, 99% of DBS checks will be covered by the first point, which is basically teaching, training, or instruction, care, or supervision of children. This needs, again, to meet the frequency condition, which would normally be the case if you're looking at a coach training children every weekend. I'll just cover the last point in relation to supervision of 16 and 17-year-olds in their employment again. So this would be if the activity is coincidental for their employment. An example being a 16-year-old working in a supermarket and their supervisor or manager. This would mean that the manager in that context would not be in a position requiring a DBS check, or maybe more related to a rugby setting, could be a bar manager who oversees a 16 or 17-year-olds collecting glasses or working in a kitchen. They're employed in their role, so therefore, if an activity solely relates to their employment, they are only considered child if under the age of 16 years old. So one second. So, can we DBS check everyone? No, unfortunately not. So while the DBS check is a powerful tool in ensuring the suitability of individuals, it is crucial to note that we simply can't DBS check anyone. The individual must be in an eligible position, such as roles involving regulated activity. This restriction ensures that the checks are focused on those people who work with vulnerable people, like children and adults in specific capacities. More importantly, a DBS check is just one piece of the puzzle in the safer recruitment process. So monitoring interactions, setting clear expectations, obtaining references, and clearly defining a role description are equally vital components. A comprehensive approach helps ensure that not only criminal history, but also overall suitability and appropriateness of an individual for a specific role are thoroughly assessed. Okay, so understanding the different levels of DBS checks is crucial when it comes to safeguarding. So let's explore the 4 levels of DBS checks, each serving a unique purpose in assessing an individual's suitability for specific roles. So at the first level, if you look at the table on the screen, is a basic DBS check. It basically provides a snapshot of an individual's criminal record. It covers unspent convictions and is often utilised for roles that require minimal interaction with vulnerable people. An individual can obtain their own basic DBS check by simply going onto the DBS website and applying. Again, moving up the hierarchy, the standard DBS check delves deeper. It includes details of both spent and unspent convictions, cautions, reprimands, and final warnings. This level is typically applied for roles that involve a higher degree of responsibility, but likely not including regular contact with vulnerable people. Then we move to the enhanced DBS check, which is a more comprehensive examination. It includes all the information from the standard check, but with additional details from the relevant local police forces, specifically relevant to the role being applied for. This level is commonly required for positions involving regular contact with vulnerable people, such as children or adults in need of care. And then finally, the highest level is the enhanced with barred list checks. This includes the enhanced DBS check, but with an additional layer. It checks against the relevant barred list, ensuring that individuals are not engaging in roles where they could pose a risk. This is particularly crucial in positions with significant responsibility for vulnerable groups. Within a rugby setting, this is the level that we check 99% of our applicants against, as they are regularly engaged in activities with children and they meet that frequency test. Additionally, within their role, the majority of coaches, even assistants, will have periods of unsupervised interactions with the children, and we deem supervision as proactive supervision, which means within earshot and monitoring all of their interactions. Okay, hopefully that's clear. But again, just to reiterate, if you've got any questions or whiz past anything, you can refer to this presentation afterwards, or you can put questions into the chat and we'll review them and send details back after this webinar. So, okay, if we go through looking now at the application process that we go through. Just 1 second to drink. Apologies again for anyone in this webinar who's used the system for a while now, but hopefully there'll be some bits and pieces even the more experienced users pick up from this. So before you begin, You need to ensure, if you want to have access to our DBS system, that you have the safeguarding officer role or safeguarding officer, safeguarding assistant role on GMS and level 4 permissions on the game management system. If you don't have access to the DBS system currently, or you're new to the role, please contact the RFU at our dbseapp@rfu.com email address, which you can see on the screen, where we'll be able to set up an account and deal with any admin issues on that front. So moving on then, we need to make sure the individual's record is visible on your organization's GMS membership. The e-learning introduction to safeguarding course must be completed within the same season the DBS applications being submitted. So just to bear in mind that the season is defined on the game management system as from the 1st of July to the 30th of June each year. So therefore, if you have someone who's completed the course on for example, the 25th of June, and you are now in technically the next season, albeit a week or two later in July, that would unfortunately, in this context, require them the course to be recompleted. It's crucial to use the same RFU ID for both the e-learning and the DBS application, which if you don't do that, then you will likely receive a block on the chance of transferring it, which will stop the application going through. So to start the application on GMS, you would find the individual, click on the little option next to the left-hand side of their forename, then navigate to the More menu, which once you've selected that person will show up at the top right of the GMS membership list, and then you would choose the function Apply for DBS. Again here, if you receive any error messages during that process, i.e. no e-learning on that RFU ID number, multiple middle names, incorrect characters in the surname or in the first name, or if a pending record already exists, they need to be rectified before you can transfer or carry out any further action. Most of those errors will be self-explanatory. However, if you feel free to reach out to ourselves at the RFU for assistance in resolving any issues. Upon successfully transferring the record to the DBS system, a blue banner will appear at the top of the screen confirming this. From there, you'd need to then log into the DBS system to carry out the next part of the process. So here we keeping in mind that once you've done that transfer, GMS will display a pending DBS status after you've initiated it. To clarify, this doesn't mean that the application is in progress at the DBS yet. It simply means that the record has been transferred from GMS and is pending on the RFU's external DBS system. Avoid transferring the record again until the outcome or cancellation of a pending record is determined. So then you would log into the DBS system. Again, if you need access, please contact the RFU. Navigate to the Manage Applications section and search for the individual you have transferred. But be aware that the GMS and the DBS systems are separate. So only use the first name and the surname. That's the only information that would have been transferred across. So therefore, don't include dates of birth or email addresses, because that will return no results on the DBS system. And then if you try and transfer again, you'll get those error messages. So it's key to just initially only search forename and surname to find the results. Once you've located that applicant, click on their name and then under available actions, initiate or manage the application based on its current status. So that may be including sending invites to select ID or carry on and complete their part of the application, sending the reminders or carrying out the ID verification. So again, case by case, that's how you would locate an individual and then manage the action that's appropriate to that person. When it comes to selecting, starting the application, it's crucial to select the correct role for each activity, and therefore ensuring that the appropriate barred list is included or not so much, or not, depending on the role the person's undertaking. So for example, if the applicant isn't working with adults at risk, do not include a role that has the adults barred list assigned against it. And another point on that front would be to understand that any senior team coaches undergoing a DBS check for the purpose of a 17-year-old playing up in the adult game are essentially defined as children's coaches, as that 17-year-old, their training is legally defined as a child, even though they're playing up into the adult senior game. And then again, following on from the regulated activity section, make sure we're choosing that role with out of barred list included if the activity is infrequent. So for example, a few times a season, or it doesn't meet the full regulated activity requirements, i.e. fully and proactively supervised all at times. And I must also emphasize the importance of data accuracy on all sections of the DBS application. So, for example, ensuring the applicant's full names are used, so not known as or Johnny or Bob or something. The full name must be included. The correct titles, for example, Miss, Mrs, or Ms, as certain titles will require previous names to be included. In all cases, the full name history from birth to the current day will be required. And then that the ID information is entered accurately, as once the ID has been submitted, it becomes encrypted. Therefore, it can't be edited or amended, so accuracy during the submission is crucial. If there are any errors, the entire application would need to be cancelled and restarted from the beginning, which I appreciate is an administrative burden for the applicant and yourselves as the ID verifier. So just again, so we've covered the data accuracy on the previous slide, just making sure that it's clearly entered properly. If we look at the non-volunteer application side of things, so if you've got a member of your club or organization that's paid for their role, after the submission of the application, it's going to be held in the system and then awaiting payment. So it should show application submitted and there will be awaiting payment. The system will automatically send a weekly notification request to yourself as the ID verifier. So if you're the main lead safeguarding officer for the club and you've got assistant safeguarding officers, it won't automatically go to yourself as the main safeguarding officer. It will go to the person that made the application. So it's a case of having that communication process and not assuming that someone else is going to be dealing with it if you're receiving that email. So what we'd request is that clubs be proactive in notifying the RFU safeguarding team when a payment is made to avoid unnecessary delays while we may have to wait for our finance department to receive the money and notify us of it. Again, if the application's been submitted in error as a non-volunteer, so it's that is something that if you let us know, we can amend and release it as a volunteer in those situations. So with regards to applications being cancelled, so it's worth noting that applications that haven't progressed, such as when an applicant hasn't logged in or had an ID or they've had their ID checked over 90 days, are automatically cancelled by the system. This isn't something that the RFU are going in and cancelling it. Systems does it automatically. The main reason for this being that the ID verification essentially becomes void. For example, a utility bill may be used within the ID check that has to be at the point of submission to the DBS issued within the last 3 months. Therefore, it's gone over that period, so it becomes void. It's important as well to be aware of this time frame and prompt applicants to take necessary action within that specified period. So this is to say the system's going to send regular weekly reminders, but doing that offline and having a chat in person at the club or wherever you're based is also beneficial, and it means that we're not having applications dragging on for weeks or months on end without the application actually being submitted to the DBS. And a few little terms on the system worth noting. So if you see an application status or PNC, that's going to mean it's at the Police National Computer stage. So that's the beginning part of the process where a scan's run against the Police National Computer to return any of those reprimands, warnings, convictions and cautions, etc. LPF, that's going to stand for Local Police Force. So that's, again, part of that enhanced DBS check where it's going to the local area police force where the person's based or may have lived. If they've moved around different parts of the country, there may be a few local police forces that will be consulted on that front. And an outcome, when a certificate's been issued and there's no information on it at all, the clue's really in the name. It will say certificate contains no information as the status. And on the flip side of that, if there's information, no matter how historic or major or minor, if there's any information on an individual's DBS certificate, it will state, please wait to view applicant certificate. I'll cover this in the adverse disclosure section a bit later on. That's sort of the process that we go through there. And there's a few more. For example, a status may say disclosure requested or pending ID verification, awaiting applicant submission. They're pretty self-explanatory. So hopefully following the application process we're going through now will ensure that you're aware of each part. The first part would be that disclosure requested, which may be a bit misleading. What that ultimately means is the record's been transferred from GMS to the DBS system, but no application has started yet. So you'd need to go into this application and instigate the process to start the application moving along. A key takeaway, again, is that the DBS approval is only confirmed when GMS reflects the DBS disclosure number and a green marker appears on the GMS membership. So in all cases, an applicant will receive a DBS certificate. So them having a DBS certificate doesn't mean that they've been approved. It only means that the certificate's been issued and this is a factual statement of that person's criminal history, whether there is some or whether there isn't any. But it's key to understand that only when GMS has been showing that DBS clearance is the person, that sort of DBS part of the safe recruitment process completed. And then from there, we would have, as we cover in the In Touch course, advise clubs that they need to continue their own safe recruitment process to make sure that that person is or remains a suitable person to engage with in coaching and act as that suitable role model around children or adults at risk. So account access. So you need to remember with regards to usernames and passwords, these are case sensitive. So whenever you're entering your login details, it needs to be entered exactly as it was when you set the password. So if you have 3 failed login attempts, that's going to automatically result in an account suspension. And the only way to remove that suspension is to contact the RFU safeguarding team. And again, do that via the DBS eapp@rfu.com email address. Additionally, an account becomes inactive if for a 6-month period you haven't accessed the system. And again, the only way to remove that lock is to contact the RFU. So I, in summary, basically advise that you keep track of your login details and make sure that you're accessing the system reasonably regularly in order to stop those locks and suspensions occurring. If you've got an application in progress, this is what we get quite a few queries in relation to. To track the progress of an application on the DBS system, you can log into the DBS system directly, locate the applicant under the Manage Applications function. Then once you've selected them, you can go to, as you'll see on the screen there, the status history to view the dates each part of the DBS process has been completed, along with the corresponding status. What I would add is we've certainly noticed it recently, and I know the DBS are working on it, but it should be aware that some local police forces, depending on their workload, the applicant, as each application is treated on a case-by-case basis, as well as other factors, might take a considerable amount of time to process their part of the application. It's important to understand that the RFU can only escalate an application with the DBS if it's been over 60 days within the local police force stage. So not just 60 days at the DBS, it needs to have been over 60 days at that final LPF stage. And again, we acknowledge when this occurs, the frustration it does cause for clubs and the applicants. However, ultimately, we're powerless to do anything in this scenario. It's essential, therefore, to be patient as possible during this phase I know the DBS do work closely with the police disclosure units where delays are common to review resource levels and work to improve their turnaround times, and it is getting better, but it is something to be aware of. Once the RFU escalate an application in those scenarios, it basically gives the local police force a 10-day window to complete their checks. This escalation process, it normally resolves the issue. However, an application can still be overdue after that 10-day window. Um, and unfortunately, as the registered body, there is no further action we can take in those situations. So please be aware that behind the scenes, the DBS will be regularly contacting those police forces where an application is, where they're aware, sorry, of an application being delayed a long time. And it's also worth noting that although we are happy to carry out an escalation request for an application, the applicant or yourselves can also submit that request via the official DBS online tracking tool, which I've included a link to further and later on in this presentation. Okay, so now let's shine a light on the crucial aspect of DBS process, the ID verification. So it's not just a formality, it's a vital step in ensuring the accuracy and integrity of the background checking process. Let's delve into why adhering to the DBS ID guidance, especially as outlined by the RFU, is paramount. So when it comes to ID verification, there is no room for compromise. It's crucial to adhere to the guidelines set by the DBS. So there's a link there within the slide that you'll be able to access that takes you directly to the DBS ID guidance that we have to follow. The RFU's DBS system is meticulously designed to align with this guidance, and therefore ensures a standardized and reliable process. The key principle in ID verification is the requirement to see original documents. So photos, scans, photocopies, unfortunately, they aren't acceptable. The applicant must present their original documents and that ultimately allow that face-to-face ID verification to take place. This hands-on approach ensures the authenticity of the identification process. And a quick note of caution, internet printouts such as bank statements are currently not accepted in the ID verification process. So it's imperative to stick to the original document requirement. This restriction is in place to maintain the highest standards and accuracy of the background checker process. I do appreciate this comes with some challenges as more and more people opt for paper-free billing and statement formats. However, all I can really say is that we must adhere to the DBS guidance in these situations. And if the applicant can contact a utility company or go to their local bank branch, if there's one locally, they can obtain hard copy statements that they can then use as part of that ID verification process. Again, and beyond just seeing the documents, it's equally vital to ensure that the information on these documents is keyed in correctly. So from names, addresses, every detail really does matter. This meticulous approach is fundamental in maintaining the integrity of that DBS process. And likewise, as I mentioned earlier, any data errors during that ID verification can't be edited after submission. So that would result in an application needing to be cancelled, resubmitted and started from the beginning, which again is an additional burden on both yourself and the applicant. So now let's cover how the RFU manages adverse disclosures and ensures that robust safeguarding process. So any DBS certificate that returns with information triggering a potential adverse disclosure, again, will be displayed with the message, please wait to view applicant's certificate. And this ultimately signals the beginning of the process managed by the RFU in accordance with our DBS case management process. The applicant is promptly notified via email of the DBS result and the process that will be instigated due to that adverse disclosure. And simultaneously, the ID verifiers yourselves who played a role in the ID verification, the application, should also be notified of that DBS result, explaining what will be the DBS process that will follow, which is basically the RFU will write to the applicant at their home address, In this written communication, the applicant is required within a set period of time, which we usually set at around 6 weeks, to allow the certificate to be received by the applicant, for them to consider it and put their representations forward. And we're asking basically for two essential components. The first is a hard copy of the latest DBS certificate, the RFU's issued certificate, and that must be submitted. We can't accept photocopies or scans or anything like that. It needs to be the hard copy certificate, so we can ensure that there's no fraudulent activity taking place, or it's not being tampered with. And then secondly, the applicant is expected to provide a written explanation or their representations addressing all of the content contained in the disclosure. It's important to state that this entire process is required, whether this is a new individual, so it's a brand new DBS applicant, or for those who are renewing their DBS clearance after 3 years, and you may have been involved in having 5 or 6 DBS checks in the last 15 years. As ultimately, we're not informed of the content of a certificate, so we have to see the latest certificate to determine that suitability and to see if there's any new information that we haven't been made aware of. Failure to comply with that process will ultimately result in a rejected DBS application. And in such instances, the applicant will be required to cease their involvement in that designated role or position. And any return to coaching would only be allowed when a subsequent DBS clearance has been granted by the RFU. So in those situations, if we've rejected an application and they submit a new application, that requirement to cease their involvement remains in place while the new application goes through until the RFU have issued that clearance. So they can't just go back to coaching with a new application in progress. As part of that thorough assessment, the club may also be contacted for a reference. So it's depending on the content of the disclosure, how frequent an offence may be, how recent, or the nature of the offence. Again, we may contact your club for a reference or feedback in relation to that applicant's suitability. This ultimately ensures a comprehensive evaluation is conducted to make an informed decision regarding the individual's suitability and any future involvement in the game. Again, depending on the nature of any offence revealed in the disclosure, the applicant may also be invited to attend a virtual interview with the RFU safeguarding team or other relevant and staff. This interview serves as an important opportunity for the applicant to provide additional context or clarification regarding their disclosed information. In most cases, the club safeguarding officer is invited to attend on behalf of the club, so therefore ultimately contributing to the collaborative decision-making process. Then from that, the referral management group, which is a cross-section of the relevant RFE staff and external experts or safeguarding team, as the case may be, play a pivotal role in deciding the suitability and outcome of that DBS application. The information gathered is carefully considered, including the results of any virtual interview, before a well-informed suitability decision is reached. Following the RMG or safeguarding team's decision, both the ID verifier and the applicant are promptly informed of the RFU's determination. This is a transparent communication, and it ensures that all involved parties are aware of the outcome and the next steps in the process. And again, it's important to note that only when the game management system is updated to reflect that current DBS status is the DBS officially approved. So until such a status is achieved, ongoing supervision and safeguards should remain in place to ensure that the continued safety and well-being of all those involved is maintained. Let's take a break, sorry. So the DBS update service, right, so this is a service that's been in existence since 2013 and brings several advantages to both the individuals and ourselves as the organisation and ourselves as the clubs. What it does, it allows an individual to subscribe directly with the DBS. This subscription empowers them to transfer their existing DBS disclosure, as long as it is for the same workforce, to other registered bodies or organisations on the provision that the other registered body accepts it. This feature simplifies the process of sharing vital safeguarding information. So the RFU has now implemented an automated system that seamlessly integrates with the DBS update service. So what I would recommend is that we recommend that you push this or communicate this and ask your applicants to subscribe to the service, especially given its benefits. So for volunteers, it's free of charge, while those in paid roles can subscribe for a nominal fee of £13 annually, which basically equates to roughly the same fee as a DBS check every 3 years, which is £38. And this not only facilitates the smoother transitions, but also removes that administrative burden from both the clubs and volunteers. So you're not having to go through an ID check every 3 years, not have to ask an applicant to log into a system. It's done on an automatic basis. So with that exceptional feature of the DBS update service is basically our ability to conduct annual status checks with the applicant's consent. And that means that the information is then used to update the game management system accordingly. This streamlined process ensures of more regular checks on an individual involved in the game, which ultimately enhances the RFU and the club's safeguarding and risk management. Perhaps one of the most significant benefits is that, again, individuals with those adverse disclosures that have been previously approved by the RFU won't need to repeat that DBS case management process every 3 years. I mean, ultimately, with the caveat being that the information on their DBS certificates remains the same with no new information available. So that also, again, not only reduces administrative work, but also ensures a more efficient and consistent approach to risk management. Okay, just here, I mentioned that the update service allows people to take their DBS certificate to different organisations. So I just want to highlight the fact that the RFU do not accept DBS checks, even if they are subscribed to the update service, that have been obtained via other registered bodies, for example, healthcare, schools, etc. This is really so that we can ensure the validity of any DBS certificate. We can be satisfied that the correct ID verification has taken place to obtain that DBS certificate and that the correct workforce is covered. So a brief overview of the simple process. So the applicant would submit a DBS application. So this is how the update service works to the applicant. The applicant will submit an application through the DBS system. This ensuring also the process aligns with the RFU's specific requirements and policies. Upon the completion of the applicant receives a DBS certificate. This certificate is the applicant's property and they should keep it safe. The applicant then receives an automated message prompting them to log on to their DBS application. This step is pivotal as it initiates the subsequent actions required for subscription to the DBS update service. So they need to log in to their application, remembering the username and password that they've created when they completed the application initially. They receive a message and they get a link then to take them to the actual DBS system, the DBS website, so outside of our system, to go through the process of subscribing to the update service. If they have any issues in accessing their application, they can use the forgotten password or username option on the disclosure website. This feature basically enables the applicants to reset their password and gain access to the necessary information. To save that necessity, though, I would again recommend that applicants note down any username and password that they've used for the application and be aware that the system, again, is case sensitive and it's separate to the GMS site. So it's not going to be the username and password that they used, for example, to book onto courses or add memberships to different rugby clubs, etc. It's the login credentials they used on their DBS application. Again, so I've covered it briefly, but I'll go over it again. The process of subscribing to that update service begins with that message. It's essential to note that the subscription process occurs on the DBS website and is outside of the RFU's direct control. So any issues that may arise during that subscription process needs to be referred to the DBS themselves. Unfortunately, the RFU can't view that or see what information or error messages have occurred. That there is contact information when they're trying to subscribe. If there is any sort of error, that they can contact the DBS to sort of look into. And an integral aspect of the subscription process is ensuring that all data entered by the applicant matches the information on the initial application. So that includes details such as whether they were in a volunteer role or a paid role, the DBS reference number, so the certificate number, or the e-reference number. So maintaining consistency in this information is key to that seamless and effective subscription process. To stay aligned with the RFU's safeguarding requirements, applicants must maintain their annual subscription to the DBS update service. That subscription allows the RFU to conduct annual status checks and update the game management system accordingly. And therefore, those regular checks contribute to a more dynamic risk management strategy. So instead of doing DBS check every 3 years, where someone could have committed an offence and be coaching kids for 2.5 years, if we're now doing it on an annual basis, we're getting potentially concerning or relevant information and a lot more frequently. It's crucial to highlight again that any changes in status, such as that emergence of a new new criminal information, or the applicant no longer subscribing, will necessitate a fresh DBS application. And that again means that we have the most up-to-date information to continue our ongoing safeguarding assessments. So in conclusion, I can't emphasize enough that the RFU really does strongly recommend applicants utilize that update service process, as it improves the ability to monitor those working with children. It removes that administrative burden from yourself as volunteers and for the applicant, and ensures again that we have the most up-to-date information available to safeguard the game. And here we have, so I mentioned it earlier, how you can track an online application. So we had the way of doing it on the DBS system, which I showed you through the status history, but this is the actual DBS website, the online tracking tool that you can go onto as yourself or the applicant. It doesn't have to be the registered body, i.e. the RFU, doing this. Put in the e-reference number and that person's date of birth, search, and then you can see the status, what each month it's gone through. And if it's been at that local police force for over 60 days, there'll be an option at the bottom to click submit escalation request, where they can do that. It's literally that easy. And again, here's a link that you can refer to after this webinar that takes you directly to the DBS ID guidance, all the different routes, all the different ID documents are accepted, managing foreign nationals, etc. So it's definitely worth having a look at that if you've got any sort of tricky applications, or you can't, or they're struggling with ID that they can provide, etc. DBS guidance leaflets. So there's some very useful guidance leaflets on that website. I'd specifically recommend that you look at the DBS checks in sport, so those working with children, and there's also one at the bottom there, working with adults, if you've got an organisation that's potentially got adults at risks involved. But that gives some sort of real life scenarios of those, whether someone's in regulated activity in different situations. So again, that's very useful guidance leaflet that DBS have created specifically for those working with children in sport, which is ultimately what we're looking at here tonight. So again, should you wish to make contact with the RFU safeguarding team, please do so via those email addresses here. So it's important to highlight that any general queries or concerns you have received in relation to safeguarding are sent to the safeguarding@rfu.com email address, and not to a specific member of the RFU safeguarding team. What that does is basically ensures that any urgent query is handled as soon as possible and isn't sitting in a member of the team's personal email box for a while, should they be on sick leave or annual leave or on training courses, etc. And then you've got any DBS queries can come straight to the dbse@rfu.com email address. But other than that, thank you very much. Hopefully you've enjoyed this evening. I appreciate I've waffled on a lot. I think we've gone over the hour now, so I don't think we really have time for any sort of questions and answers on this chat. But just to reiterate that The slides, notes, a full question and answer pack for any questions that are in the chat will be collated and emailed to you all after this, so that you can all see the answers to the questions. All of you have a copy of these slides. And again, the video as well, I believe, is going to be forwarded on. Other than that, thanks very much for your time. And I'll hand back to Alex if he wants to wrap this up.
Thanks, Chris. I hope you found that